to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this is the SAU 67 board meeting, August 19th, and we're going to start with the minutes from the last two meetings, Dr. C?
Yes.
Okay, anyone have any comments? Minor one.
Board meeting minutes from August 6th on page 5, second to bottom line. I don't think it matters too much, but it says significant change in the coveted landscape instead of COVID landscape.
Good catch.
And, on the next page, page 6, second paragraph, SAU subcommittee is leaving left on Jenna.
Okay, that's all I have.
Which, is that August 6th or 20?
August 6th, page 6.
Right, so we had July 30th and August 6th. Any on July 30th?
Sorry, nothing for me.
Okay. All right, anyone else? Jeff Trexler? No. Are you waiting for the load? No, I'm good. Okay. All right. Have a motion, Clem?
You betcha. Make a motion to approve the July 30th and August 6th, 2020 meeting minutes as amended.
I second that.
Second, Jennifer. Okay. Is anyone remote on the board?
Nicole, I don't think she's.
Okay.
Because I haven't heard.
So we can do a straight vote with ayes and nays. All in favor of the meeting minutes as amended July 30th and August 6th?
Aye.
Okay, 9-0, one absent. Okay, we've got a meeting tonight. We're gonna have some opening remarks by the SAU board. I'll deliver those very briefly. Then we're gonna have a statement from the union representative, Sue Priebus. Is Sue on remote? Okay. Then we're gonna go through a detailed review of the opening plan that was sent out by Parent Square by Dr. Cascadden yesterday, and we'll go through several of the updates. I just wanted to take a few minutes, as well as Dr. Bartlett will go through a lot of the plan as well. I just want to take a few minutes to say a couple things to the community. As the board, we've been quite quiet in these meetings so far, and there's a lot of reason for that. Typically, we sit back and review the superintendent's recommendations. There are times when we do comment and we discuss and we bring up issues and raise questions. So I just want to address a couple things that came in by email. In the community, we talked to people. We received 150 to 200 comments. I can say that almost all of us, or all of us, read every single one. We considered them. We gave them our full attention. This is not a light issue to deal with, and we went through those with great care. Right now, I'd like to thank, is that Sue? Okay, great. I'd like to thank Dr. Cascadden and his staff, all of the administrators and the teachers and the community for being a part of this process. It's one that none of us foresaw, one that none of us wanted to really be too involved with, but here we are trying to do the best we can. As of this morning, I looked on the tracker for New Hampshire. In Merrimack County, there is still a very low number of active cases, 12, as of 4:30 this afternoon. So that's still very good news. We seem to have a trend in the right direction for the last several months, and the hospitals are not inundated, from what I can tell, on the tracker as well. That link is in the document that was sent out by Dr. Cascadden under community spread. Anyone can click on it and go through the various data at any time. As to the SAU board, anyone who doesn't know, this is two school districts, separate in nature. They come together as one. There's 5 of us from Dunbarton. There's 5 from Bow. Bow School Board handles Bow issues, middle school, elementary school, high school, as well as the Bow union negotiations. Dunbar does the same on its side, just with the elementary school only. So there is a little bit of separation there. There were some comments we received in the emails that the board was not responsive to some of the email comments or statements, and there's reason for that. At the time the union made their statement, Dunbar obviously is not involved, so we were not going to comment, and that's a confidential process that was going on, and hopefully everyone made it through, and we'll get some more information tonight for everyone. So it wasn't that we were not going to respond or didn't show consideration, it was just not relevant or appropriate at the time because the negotiations were ongoing. So that's one thing I wanted to say. The next thing I want to say is the board consists of 10 professionals. We have registered nurse, we have a doctor, we have attorneys, we have former educators, we have current educators, we have a pharmaceutical executive, we have a facility management executive, and this is something that we're not experts on, and we don't claim to be. Two of us probably are, but still, that's the registered nurse and the doctor. But this is our job. We're here to review recommendations and all of the information, the science, the data, and we're looking at everything very closely. We know that it's not entirely appropriate for us to put our epidemiology hat on, but we're doing the best we can with the information we have, and we're all in this together. We all care very much about the students, the teachers, the staff, and the community at large. So this decision is not taken lightly. We're all here because we care about education. And I can tell you from Dunbar's perspective, prior to joining SAU 67, we saw other boards in action. And I'm quite confident that this is one of the most closely aligned boards I've been on, the friendliest, the easiest to work with, and the most people are willing to accept differences of opinion. So I think we have a great set of people to represent the two communities and to make some decisions and review the superintendent's recommendations. I want to be clear that our focus is on health and safety. Right now, we see a very low risk. We're going to start in green, but that could change. And we are okay with starting in green based on the information we have at hand to date, but know that that could change. I'm going to have, I want you all to know too as well, that this board, all of us either have students, family, spouses, other loved ones, or friends in the system. So we're all in this together. We're not making a decision as if none of us are going to be impacted by this. So we're here to support the teachers, we're here to support the staff, we're here to support the administrators, and I want everyone to know that we're taking this very seriously and looking at all the information. I'm going to give a chance now for the union representative, Sue Priebus, to make a statement she'd like to. And on my closing remarks, anyone feel free to reach out to us by email or phone. Everything's listed online. We're here to answer questions, and we're here to accommodate anything that we can to help this transition easier. Go ahead, Sue.
Okay, thanks. So good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address you once again tonight on behalf of the Bow Education and the Educational Support Staff Association members. This one's going to be very, very short. We're making great progress, smiling, things are good. Teachers and support staff remain committed to returning to school to educate your children in a safe and effective manner. We've been meeting weekly with members of the Bow School Board and administration and feel we've been making progress, working collaboratively together. There are some central protections that we feel absolutely must be in place prior to school reopening, but we're hopeful that the district reopening plan and a few additional details that we're discussing will assure working conditions are as safe as they need to be. A few examples of details that we are, so these are ongoing. We're discussing them and we are awaiting a couple of details on. One example of that would be the HVAC system. So evaluations are in progress and we're looking forward to hearing that they're up to standard or will be brought up to standard before we return. Cleaning protocols. Our district staff are working with recommendations from experts, and we are awaiting the final details about the how, the when, and the by whom. before we get back to school. Individual classrooms. So lots and lots of changes are going on in all of our schools. Tables in some cases are being removed and desks are going in. Personal items are having to go out to make the most space possible. Lots of changes are going on so that safe distance between students and from students to teachers may be maintained, both during instruction and during lunch times. But it remains to be seen if all classroom sizes and configurations are going to be adequate for that. The integrated instruction model, also known as the hybrid model. We're looking forward to Dr. Bartlett's presentation tonight, truly, about hearing some more details about that and hearing more about the model in the coming days. We are also confident that teachers will be provided with adequate technology so we can meet the needs of all of our students, both in person and remote, fairly and consistently during school hours. On a final note, district employees are meeting individually with administration as needed to discuss their personal, medical, and family realities. We are looking forward to the creative solutions that will allow students to learn, teachers to teach, support staff to support, and everyone to get back to some semblance of normalcy just as soon as possible. Thank you.
Bryce?
I'll just quickly respond to that, just to say that I'm on the union negotiating committee for the school board, Bryce Larrabee. And I would echo what Sue just said. As far as I'm concerned, at no point was there any contentious nature between us. We're all trying to get it right as best we can. The teachers, the students, the administration, everyone. And there's a natural progression through those discussions, and we're moving in the right direction collaboratively, and I think everything's going to be as good as it can under the circumstances, and I continue to look forward to working with Sue and the rest of the union, and I think it's all going to work out just fine between all of us. So thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
Any other board members want to make any comments? Okay, all right, Dr. Cascadden.
Thank you. I don't plan to read through the opening plan, but I will cover it section by section a little bit, make a few comments, and make a few additions. I think, don't just skip the introduction. I think it's important to understand why we do things. It's mission-based, it's goal-based. I want to talk a little bit about how the plan was developed. And through this time, I read 2 books. They were short books with a lot of pictures in them. One of them was called Our Iceberg is Melting. It was about penguins having to deal with a melting iceberg. And the other one was about meerkats, and it was called That's Not the Way We Do It Around Here. And both of them were written by a management theorist called John Cotter. And it talks about, in a time like this, our old structures of doing business may not be effective. But they're still good. The whole idea of having bureaucratic controls, having task force, working with things like that, they're good, and they're a good way to establish procedures. But in a time of emergency, you need more nimble administrative structures. And one of the things that I came to realize about how this plan came to be developed, it was a little bit of crowdsourcing. I mean, I put out some parent square, and people would send some emails to me, and I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't think about that, or wow, that's a good idea, we'll incorporate it. So one of the things I wanted to say thank you to is the number of community members and staff members, and especially the board, who responded to questions, helped us test things out, sent us emails. Those were very key in the adapting of this plan. And now I feel that we're getting to the point where my work and the work of kind of the centralized plan is coming a little bit to a close. And I've always believed in Deming's philosophies that the best decisions are made closest to the work. Our teachers are coming in next week for professional development. In our plans, we've talked about activating our safety committees, and also sometimes called the risk loss management, that our teachers and our staff need to get in and help us make some decisions on how to solve all these issues. And we're very interested on having them come in and help us make those decisions. So, we had to move quickly. The plan was put together in a month, kind of the overall framework. But I am not calling this a draft plan that's coming to you. It's just in the Google Doc, which means it can be revised and changed, and there are a couple things I'm going to talk about tonight that we are going to be working on changing even as we speak. The HVAC report isn't included in the plan yet. That is going to be completed soon. That'll be in there. That'll answer a lot of those questions. One of the things that we're looking at is staff is requesting a 6-foot safe distance around them as staff. And so we will work with that with individual staff members, but people have to know that one of the cultural things you have to work on besides hand washing, mask wearing, is distance. And it is respectful to give another person a fair amount of distance, especially the adults in the building. That, 6 feet of distance around the adults is going to be an expectation as we go through. The other thing is that we really need to operationalize more as visitors. Our schools are not going to be as open as they were before. I have to develop more protocols on visitors and how those are going to be managed within school. It's in the grid, but it really isn't spelled out the way it has to go. So there are a few things that we're still working on that we really have to work on. We have changed the name from hybrid to integrated learning model. We found that hybrid as a word has come to denote an alternating day schedule. That's not what we're talking about. Dr. Bartlett is going to try to show what this integrated model is going to be. And to me, it is the absolute key to the plan. Because what this is going to look like is intermittent absences. People are going to get up in the morning, they're going to take the screening test, or they're going to say, I really shouldn't go in today. I have some COVID signs, or I've been exposed. And we're going to have people in and out of classrooms all the time due to screening, due to self-isolation, due to symptoms. And so we need a model that doesn't change whether you're in class or remote, and that can keep kids up to speed as we go along. And if we ever do have to go to yellow, half the kids will be in class and half the kids remote for 2 days, and then they'll switch. But you still have to teach those kids in a singular model. And so that was one of the key things that were in the plan. The opening days of school are listed in the plan on page 7. We do have a slow rolling opening. Does the board have any questions about those opening days of school, or we're good? We have a status matrix based on colors, and I'm still operationalizing the level descriptions. Mr. Ford is working on getting a formal contract with a physician to help us. Also, last week in the governor's press conference, I think it was on Thursday, he talked about DHHS involving developing a contract tracing model involving outbreaks and clusters. Right now, all I have is a link to the WMUR article on that, but I assume that we're going to be getting something from DHHS itself about contact tracing in clusters and outbreaks. So that part of the plan is still being developed. Any questions on the status level changes?
Dr. Cascan, I just want to point out one thing, and I know it's later on in the packet for the people viewing. The chart doesn't have start times. Was a question I received today.
Start like date times during the day?
Like what time they can drop off. If you look later in the package, it talks about 7:30, 7:50, up to 8:15. So there is more information deeper in the packet. But is that going to change?
I don't believe that's going to change from what's in the packet principles. It's really principle of the Zoom.
The middle school arrival is 8:15 to 8:30 for rolling window. So anytime from 8:15 to 8:30 will be just fine to drop your students off at the parent drop-off zone, or as buses pull through, they'll use the bus.
So it's page 29. So that's the one we're going to go with. Okay. Excellent, Adam. Thanks. For the middle school and the high school, Brian's going to stay the same.
Yep, I mean, we don't have necessarily designated.
Yeah, I see that.
Under the district-wide standards, I am going to add something about visitors. We've got some text that we're going to work on, but in general, we're going to try to keep visitors out of the school as much as possible. We're going to try to do things remotely as much as possible. If you do have to come in and drop something off for your student or so forth, there's going to be a protocol for visitors being screened, just like everyone else coming into the building is screened, and we'll try to minimize contact as much as possible. Mask, I've tried a lot of different masks. I kind of like this cotton one that I have on right now. I do realize I'm gonna have to wash my face for it. You know, people have been talking to me about acne, it's kind of acne for masks, and I think those are things that we'll have to deal with. But requiring masks to be worn at all time, absolutely, we have some standards. I finally found one that kind of works for me. And I've had it on, I think, almost all day today. I haven't taken it off that much, and it can work. It takes some time. We have to work with our students to do that. Our screening form, we've been trying to get that out to people. Again, it's something you'll have to get used to filling out. It's more of a tool that creates a dashboard so we can see what the level of infection is in the community. And we'll be having to rescreen, but it'll be a matter of training people to get that done and going forward. And finally, you have to be very careful about travel on our screening form. We don't have that in there as a question because we couldn't do that with Parent Square. But if you travel outside of the New England states, there's an exception for bringing your kids to school that's listed in there. You need to self-isolate for 14 days, and we're asking people to do that. And we're asking people to do a lot of things. Not come to school or work when you are sick. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Respect other people's social distance. Not come to school or work if you have been traveling. These are all spelled out there. It's gonna take the cooperation of the community to actually make it work. We're gonna try to enforce things as much as possible. We have ways to try to do it, but we need the community to help us out to do that. Food service, again, there's a general food service one in there, and then each of the buildings has to figure out how to do lunch in their building, because we're working on that. Transportation, and are there any things on food service or transportation that people felt they wanted to discuss?
Question?
Yes.
Have we received anything from the Goffstown Truck Center that would correlate with the plans that are here for the boat safety program?
Ray, do you have a question?
No.
Goffstown Truck Center, have you heard anything from them regarding their protocols or our protocols that they'll be able to abide by?
Sure. There was one thing that we requested that they said no. So when we look at the transportation, there'll be a part in parentheses that says boat only. And this wasn't a local decision. This was a corporate national decision. They have a national policy where they don't allow any sanitizer on the bus. They just don't allow it. And one of the things that we're going to do in Bo is require a mask of everyone. But when the student gets to the top of the stairs, they're going to sanitize before they go to their seat. In Dunbarton, the sanitizing won't take place because they won't allow that on the bus.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we've talked about the HVAC study is being completed. That'll be good when the report is there. They finish our question. The other part, we've got a pretty strong protocol for nurses. Our nurses will have a fair amount of authority to send people home who are exhibiting signs of COVID. We've had a number of discussions and a number of test cases this week that if you are symptomatic, you definitely have to go home. We've used the term highly suspicious of COVID for sending people in your family or people you're in close contact home. We're going to ask that everyone who has any of the signs to stay home. But if we have someone who's highly suspicious, high fever, cough, sudden onset, we may say, okay, not only you as the person, but people who have been in close contact, we want you to go and stay home. Our nurses will have a lot of authority to do that, and we expect that their decisions will be abided by parents. They're definitely going to be supported by administration, but realize that our nurses will have a lot of authority to either exclude kids from school or send them home once they're there. So again, it's that whole thing of this community, you need to stay home or not come to school if you are sick. And we're going to keep the community healthy by doing that.
Dr. C,
Questions on nurses?
I got a question going back to if you go out of the New England states, if a family member works out of the New England states, does the whole family have to quarantine?
That's not what the guidance says, okay? It says if you traveled outside of the New England, then you have to quarantine. If you have a family member who travels outside of that area, then they should be quarantining themselves. But unless they're showing other signs of COVID, it doesn't say that family members of them have to also quarantine. That's my understanding.
HVAC question. So this is obviously for you, Blaine. If COVID didn't exist, if we were just in a normal school year, if I understand correctly, our HVAC systems are absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Our schools could start school like normal. The systems are working great, correct?
Correct.
So can you explain then what we're trying to do on top of that? Like how is it what we're doing now in the study tied to, I guess, COVID, and how are we going to go above and beyond what we've done in the past?
Yep, so one of the things, so the standard that is being used is it's an engineering group, the Academy of, I think it's Heating, Air Conditioning Engineers, ACRA is their acronym. And they rewrote the CDC standards. And what has been shown is that if you have more filtration and air movement, that can lower the spread or the possibility of spread within a school building. So they rewrote those standards so that, for example, one of the recommendations I think that we're going to get is you run your system earlier. So say we have all our systems shut down at night and they don't run, and then they automatically turn on at a set time during the morning. One of the recommendations I'm confident will be that needs to start earlier. So you get any stale or air that's just been sitting there out of the building way before anybody comes in. One of the things that will be, I'm pretty confident recommended, or what will be attempted, is to put a higher grade filter in the existing units if possible. I don't think that's going to be possible, but so for example, right now, as it says in the opening plan, we use a standard filter for schools called an MERV 8 filter. The standard filter for medical settings is a MERV 13. It's a wider, thicker filter that filters out more stuff. So that's one of the things that if you can do that, that's a great thing to do. Change your filters more frequently. Those kind of things is what is being recommended.
So, and are those recommendations? Like, so let's say you don't get this study back, for some reason it never happens. Is our HVAC systems working sufficiently now to meet whatever codes and the laws and everything that we need to as of today?
So yes, as of today, if this thing didn't exist, absolutely.
Okay, but it does exist.
Yes.
Could we still as of today?
Yeah, so what we'll do, I don't know that. So that's why we're having somebody look at it. And so I'm meeting with them Friday morning. My guess is I'm going to get some preliminary recommendations at that time. So it might not be the full-blown written report, because those take a long time or take a while to write up, but I'm sure we'll get some, this is what we're seeing. One of the things that we wanted to have people look at as well is to just make sure that everything's operating correctly, a different set of eyes, to look at it. Because sometimes, we might change something and forget about it, and that's not working as designed. We're going to have somebody go through and look at it, and it should be working this way, and just make sure everything's working correctly.
So you don't get
access to so all of our systems work remotely, computerized, online. We gave that control for the 3 Bow systems to Turner so that they can look at it remotely in their office and do it, they have access right now.
So you notice it's colder in here today?
yeah.
Yeah, they're running the air more. And that's what a couple of they're trying all sorts of stuff, run the air more, do this, do that.
But you're going to get, this is what you have to do, and these are things you can do above and beyond that. Is what your expectation of
Right.
this report
And
is.
some of the recommendations, at least the kind of at least kind of seeing one of these reports before, some of the recommendations might be long-term, might be like, and some of them will fit in, I'm sure, to the BES renovation, because we know that we were going to replace those systems anyway. So it might be the recommendation, well, you were probably thinking about doing this kind of replacement. You might want to do this other kind of replacement that will allow you to do all of these things in case it ever happens again. Because we never would have thought, I don't think, and probably an engineer who was working with us on that renovation probably never would have designed a rooftop unit that probably would have taken anything beyond a MERV 8 because that's the standard for schools. But now, because this has happened, my guess is that when schools get designed, they're going to look at enhanced capability in case something like this happens down the road. So I think that's what we're going to see, those kind of, hopefully, those kind of recommendations.
Thanks.
My turn. I got two quick questions related to the Parent Square self-reporting app.
Yep.
One is, I already found in our testing of it that it's difficult to remember to do it, and I suspect it will have lower than optimal returns if you don't have some sort of reminder system. So I'm wondering if either we contemplate some sort of text or message that goes out daily to remind people, and or we could remind people to do what I'm going to do for myself. The way that I get myself to be efficient is I will set my phone alarm to go off at 7:30 each morning, and it'll say right on it, I'll set it to say, go in the app. If we can remind parents to set their own alarms, we might have better turnout for the
During the professional development week, I'm going to put some more, I think it's a matter of, like you said, get people to do it, and that's a great idea to tell people, hey, put in a phone alarm. My wife does for her work, she has to phone. But the dashboard is the helpful thing. I mean, when you fill out the form, what I see on the other side is a quick dashboard. This is how many people have filled it out, this is how many have not, this is how many are reporting symptomatic. So that allows our nurses and administrators, first thing in the morning, concentrate on any of those kids who either did not fill it out or are symptomatic.
Do we have it linked such that you can quickly access a cell phone and send a text to the person who did not
I have to
respond?
check on that. I'll have to-
That would be
that's
handy.
what-
Again, if it was a push, I mean, you can't do this, but it'd be nice if it was push a button, all those that lit up red that hadn't responded yet automatically get a text. That may not be.
I may not respond because they're not coming to school that day.
That could be good. One more quick question. I think I can see there'll be days when people are wondering if their child has enough symptoms now to come in. Child has an earache or an itchy knee, and they're not sure if they should send their child in. I, as a parent, wouldn't be sure if I should call the school nurse, the front office, or someplace else. So I wonder if we, for each school, will have a number as to where you're supposed to contact if you're not sure, or with similar questions.
Okay.
Because it would be the school nurse, just as the office.
Perfect. So
Right, because we would send them to the school nurse.
Right, but if we don't publish that information,
Yep.
I, as a parent, might call the front office
Yeah,
and
we would
speak
just
of
send
it.
it.
It should be the school nurse, so, which makes perfect sense,
Yeah.
but we need to let everybody know that.
Yeah, and I'm able to edit those pop-up screens. I can't edit the questions themselves, but I can edit the introduction of the pop-up screen. So the pop-up screen would be a good place to put that.
I like it. Thank you.
One more question on Eric's question there. So let's say there's 50 kids that show up at the school that didn't do any of the testing as expected. So then the expectation is the nurse is going to track down those 50 and make them take that. And let's say there's repeat offenders of that. Is there going to reach a point where it's like,
Yep.
the nurse can't spend the whole day tracking people down?
If there are repeat offenders, we've talked about either you're not wearing your mask, you're not doing your screening, or you're not respecting other people's social distance, there is another option for your child. It's called remote instruction.
Okay.
Because if you're going to come to school, you're coming to school with the understanding you're following the safety protocols that we have put in place. And remote instruction is the other option. And, we realize that there'll be a little bit of training period, but like you said, if it is willful or we feel that, this is the 5th time this week you haven't filled out your screening form, no, there's another option, remote instruction for you.
Yeah, because this is going to be one of the toughest years in nurses. It's got to be the toughest year ever, at least in my lifetime for a nurse. And to spend their time trying to track down numerous kids over and over, that just doesn't seem like good use of their skill set.
Special education, any questions for Ms. Marcy Kelly? A lot of individual meetings going on. And we're going to give, before she gives her presentation, do you have any questions for Dr. Bartlett? Or she's going to give her presentation after we get through the morning. All right, and then we go to individual buildings. Dunbar Elementary School, any questions for Mr. Harrington and how he is specifically operationalizing Dunbar?
Oh, and what is happening with ASP, and if I missed it?
ASP is out.
It is happening,
It is out.
okay. Is it in here? Did I miss it?
No, I didn't put it in there.
Okay.
Shirley's been reaching out.
Okay, good.
That's the after-school program.
After-school program is available, it's gonna be outdoors in the gym as usual?
Correct.
Okay, the next one is Bow Elementary School, Ms. Kruger. Any questions for Ms. Kruger and how the elementary school is gonna run or not run?
Could you describe these, the Cub Scout graded dividers? Are they like this? Do they sit on the tables? Do
It
they?
would sit on the table, so if I was, I'm sure you'll have a picture on my phone. It has been on the Bow Community web page. So Vic has come in with it and we've measured it for the tables. So these are all smaller than the tables we have. Essentially, I can put it on any round or rectangular table and it will fit. If I were to sit at a table, it's probably this high for me. It's a strong plastic material. And so if for some reason it rips, there's no children watching. If a child put a pencil through it, which could happen, there are replacement parts for us and it's easy to do. He is making some that are smaller. We have some trapezoid tables and other smaller desks up in 4th grade, and it was wider, so he's making them less small. I think what's really good about them is it'll allow us to create some mass breaks. It allows us to have the space that when kids are eating in rooms, that they're not, our rooms aren't as big. It's to me, a really big part of our safety measures that are in place for the number of children who will be in the room.
Will you only have those out during lunch or are those out all day long?
All the time. So the kids are working at their tables. I think it's hard for little kids to not want to sit right next to each other. So when they're at their seats, they would have that so that they would have their space. We are wanting our young children to be able to move around the room, to have time on the rug in a manner that would be distanced. Our kindergarten teachers have some good ideas for that they've shared, and we've ordered some devices that could be a mark for, like, if every kid has a number in the class, number 2, you sit here, those go down so that they can have those spots. And even keeping our social play area open, but limiting how many kids go in. I mean, really, it's about wearing your mask, washing hands. And so we're looking for that.
Thanks.
We're very thankful to the Cub Scouts for them also. That is huge, huge.
Memorial School? Any questions for Adam? He sent you some videos. If you believe the video. He's been, Sean Costello commented today that he really appreciated the work that Adam had done and really working with the buildings to try to maximize the visits and working with teachers in this space.
I've got a question. The items allowed to bring to school, sounds like that's a work in progress still. But my question would focus around the plan to have students plan to leave room in their backpacks for their lunch, having fewer notebooks to accommodate that, but then eventually to put their coats, hats, and gloves in that backpack as well. And I guess my comment would be, my boy's fairly large backpack would not accommodate his jacket alone, let alone his gloves and his paperwork. If I got his winter jacket, which is going to be usually wet with wintry stuff, stuffed into there, I think it would ruin his paperwork and his laptop computer. So I'm wondering if we either want to, I know you're still working the plan, but either work on the plan so that they have a place to put their wet things outside their backpack, or maybe the recommendation might have to be bring a backpack in a duffel bag, something like that. But I just, unless I'm misunderstanding, I don't quite see how we're going to get winter jackets and laptops and paper notebooks into the same backpack.
So my hope with that section is really twofold, and one is just to communicate, we really need to minimize what we're asking for from parents this year. So that was one of the biggest pieces I was hoping to get across in that section. And the audience was kind of twofold. It was board and parents, but there's also teachers, because we have to really reimagine what our school supply list looks like. So one of the big drivers in that section was we need to really minimize so that the backpack is smaller. And I was trying to communicate the point that kids really are gonna carry most of their belongings around with them, probably in almost every building. So I'm gonna imagine that lockers are kind of a non-starter. If you start doing lockers, you are gonna be corralling kids right next to each other, and that's gonna be very difficult to do. So I'm not anticipating using them. In fifth grade's luckier. We can use the cubbies, and I've talked to the fifth grade team, they feel like they have a good organized plan. So when your son comes in and hanging up his coat, there is a book there, no problem. Kind of easy peasy, but 6, 7, and 8, they're all locker based. So if we were to bring in 2 bags, like a duffel, that's no problem at all. We actually have shelving built in to every classroom. What we're really trying to avoid is giving the impression that the duffel would be something you could go back to during the day. That just because of all of a sudden, if they're down the hall in another classroom and they're coming back to get their materials, now we're creating that cohort contamination kind of.
But you could potentially have a duffel as a locker
absolutely.
space to put.
Just like I anticipate, we're gonna have, if we're able to run band, and we're hopeful we can, we're gonna try. Well, those kids, they carry some, Jake brings a pretty big instrument to school daily, so we need to have a place for him to put that, so we anticipate athletic bags as well. So when you take lockers out of the equation, it's a challenge.
And then while you're trying to be kind to parents, not have them go out and shop too much, for those who have fifth grade children in, there was a video conference at the end of last year because they couldn't have a live tour.
Right.
And one of the things that was discussed was, here's some of the minimum things you want to get.
Right.
Those who got those things could probably still bring those things if they didn't feel it's too much for their child to carry, even if it doesn't fall into line with what was
They
listed.
absolutely could. I mean, the teacher would still love for them to have those big trappers. My worry is just,
Too much to carry.
start putting that trapper in there, you get the lunch in there, it really does add up quickly. So we're just trying to be really cognizant. My whole point in writing that little section was, we really do want to minimize, we really do want to be aware that for most kids, less so with fifth grade, because they still have their cubbies, and they move less far, the way we paired them this year. We just want to be aware of the size of the backpacks and the weight, but we can make accommodations, especially as we go deeper into the school year. I have a feeling we'll probably change a number of things as we get deeper into the season and we see what works and what doesn't. I think we'll be wise to tweak and adjust this. It's a good point and good question. Sarah.
I just have one question about dismissal, because you have it in depth, it's good, but so for the parent pickup phase, it doesn't really talk about, I know it's 2 phased, like A through K, L through Z, and they pick up in different spots, but it doesn't specify like times for that, which I think would probably be helpful for parents. I know it'll be a work in progress and it may change, but just to start off even like the first day or whatever, having that.
I think that's really good feedback. I've been thinking more and more about that. I actually have times in my head that I could kind of overlay and put on that. And I met with Lori and Chief Luigi and the maintenance guys here on, I think it was Monday, and Doug was there. It was a very good meeting. And out of that, the key piece was when Lori mentioned what time they were going to be leaving the elementary school, which was first staggered dismissal.
Right.
Which then makes our staggered dismissal possible. And I know I described it in 2 or 3 phases in that document, but I'm now almost thinking on Jenna as 4.
Right.
4 might make it easier for parents to digest. Bow buses first, then we'll dismiss parents A through K, so they go down by that area where Doug has always managed.
Yeah.
And then you bring in L through Z into the bus loop. It'll almost be on a 7-minute stagger.
Okay.
And because I think in 7 minutes, that's about how long it takes to do a wave. When we dismiss our kids for buses now, we pretty much have both buses out of there in about 7 minutes.
There's less kids now.
Yeah.
So we have this grand plan that works because there's less kids.
Okay, I'm going with the great plan.
And another key to this, making this work, is the Dumbarton buses have always left between 3:20 and 3:25. So if we can just get them to hold off campus until about 3:22, they'll still be leaving at approximately the same time, but that creates the space to make the other discussions happen.
This reminded me because your shirt, your Go Wildcat shirt there, which made me think, I see in this plan that the Tri-County, you guys have now, I guess, heard from the Tri-County Conference about sports?
Yeah, Mike spoke with them earlier this week. I was on a call with Mike today. We were talking with cross-country coaches about it. I can't tell you the exact start date. He could. He knows them. He knows when the different sports are able to begin.
Yeah.
It'll be similar to what the NHIAA is doing with a delayed start to the fall season and kind of a truncated season. But I do know they've given us the same type of flexibility for scheduling, so we'll be able to schedule regionally. So when he and I were talking about it, we were really looking to mirror very similarly what the high school is doing, which had to do with, and I don't know if Brian's going to get into it or not a little later, but like selecting towns and almost doing a home and home kind of a series, like if you play John Stark, you go once that week to Stark, and the next game would be Bow home. We'll try and mirror what the high school is kind of doing. We'll try and mirror the same town cohorts. So even in that way, you're kind of, I mean, I don't know if there's a net positive to that, but
It can't hurt. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
Questions to the high school?
Good luck.
Any information on CRTC?
Yeah, definitely, I'll give you more up to date. But, so they voted Monday night, to allow some in-person instruction for CRTC. I guess, big picture with all the sending schools and everything coming in, they can't have every student every day from every school. So we submitted the days which our preferences are, which is first every day. And then second, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then get back to us if you can't meet those two requests. So our goal is to, joking aside, is to send our kids as much as they allow us to CRTC. That's how we kind of built our schedule. We know it's important for those students. So as long as they allow us to go, we will be sending our kids.
Brian, and this is even for Dean. So is there a network among the CRTC schools? So let's say there's some massive outbreak at, I don't know what the 9 schools are, Pembroke or something. And those kids go to CRTC. Like, how would we get that information? Is there any talk of that, of communications where?
Yeah, we haven't gotten that far with Steve yet because we've been tackling this over the case. Steve Ralph, the director over there. But we're communicating about everything, so I would imagine that would just be part of the communication chain if that kind of gap happens,
Yeah.
We have, interestingly, a lot of parents and students, and I really applaud them for doing this. If their students are going to CRTC, they're actually opting for remote VHS classes because of the safety. They know they're going to be exposed to students from up to 9 different schools and communities. And so instead of coming back to the building, they're going to opt to take the courses remotely. That was with no prompting from us. They asked if that was okay, and we were like, yeah, sure, that's great. Thank you so much for helping us out. I mean, that's not universal. In no way are we going to make that a requirement for those kids, but people are very conscious of that. We appreciate people thinking about that.
And the last section of the plan, basically, is co-curriculars and sports. We've got that more operationalized. We're going to play sports, and there's classic sports as much as kind of is allowed. The athletic director, I think you alluded to it, they're looking at a regionalized schedule, and they're talking about like playing all sports with one town per week. Like maybe first week of the season, it's us and John Stark. Any contests that we would do in sports would be only with John Stark that week in all of our sports. And then the next week we would switch to different. That's what they're looking at doing. Golf and bass fishing would be a little bit different. But it's amazing when you just let people say, hey, these are our goals, try to figure out something that works. They come up with stuff that I never would have even thought of. So they're working on that. There also are some more protocols being developed for sports. I didn't put them in the main document, but things like, you don't shake hands at the end of a contest. There's less expectorating and no sunflower seed chewing. I mean, a lot of things that people who actually are in sports would say, okay, we got to talk about this. Those will be out. We haven't put out our spectator, but there may be limiting of spectators to some of our sports. And you're definitely going to be asked to wear a mask and social distance if you come to view a contest. but that's still being worked on. But again, our goal is to play as many sports as we can in green level according to NHIA guidelines. Personally, I grew up playing sports. I was a football player. I was a football coach. A lot of the things that I learned in my life, I learned on the football field. I learned things about being part of a team, about doing your job, about relying on teammates, about the camaraderie. My best friends are the guys that played football with in high school, and we can still tell you exactly how we lost the Plymouth the last game of our senior season. It's an important part of kids' lives. I mean, if you saw the MUR special on schools, there are a lot of kids who are talking about, gee, I really want to get back. And a lot of parents talked about their kids who were losing drive and losing ambition. And, we have to keep people safe from COVID. It's absolutely number one goal. But there's another insidious, maybe unseen things. We have to make sure that this generation develops well socially and emotionally, and I think co-curriculars is a big part of that. So, I think it's a little strange. I won't mention the district, but a district that you don't have remote teaching, but you allow your kids to come in for sports. I'm not sure I would make that decision, but I think if we're bringing people in for on-site instruction, then sports are a good decision for us.
I have a co-curricular question. How well-rounded have we gone through the band and choir situation at the band and choir? Do we have a plan at both the schools as to how those will go forward? Are they going to go forward in the same locations, or?
We're adjusting everything for band and choir. So there's a report, I'm going to mispronounce it or missay it, but I think it's out of Denver, Colorado. It's from the music organizations that a lot of the musical associations here in the state are kind of following that give you guidelines on how to pull this off. So I know Alicia at the high school, I'm sure that the guys down at the middle school, that's what they're kind of guiding. So some of the things we're doing, just to kind of summarize, we're not having them in the band and choir rooms. The spaces are too small. We're first moving everyone to the auditorium as a minimum, just because it's a bigger space, you can really spread people out. So have some acoustical value because you're in there. And that's beyond just being on the stage in the auditorium, but we utilize the entire auditorium space for it. I know let's just trying to figure out how to get them actually outside as much as possible to kind of perform in that. She's going to be making adjustments in her instructions, so she may only be actively performing potentially with smaller groups or like a particular section within the band or a voice group or something like that. So she doesn't have, all 50 of them kind of going at one time. And may schedule some, utilize that kind of Wednesday flex time to kind of really, when it's smaller, and can really kind of work in a more space issue. We ordered some of these covers for instruments, so it goes on like a trumpet, and you put it on, and you can apparently still hear. It sounds fine, but it blocks some of the, I guess, spit is the best way to describe it. That kind of comes through the trumpet naturally like that. So any of those type of instruments, we've ordered some of those materials, and we're hoping we can test those out and see how they kind of go. And then she's got this crazy model for a cage is the best way to describe it, that you can put in a mask, so it puffs out your mask, so when you sing, you can still kind of, it doesn't sound the same, but like part of the issue with the singing is when you bring in in your mask. So this cage prevents that. So we're going to see if that fits, if that works, if we can utilize that in kind of the choral classes. So it's a lot of trial and error right now as we get different kind of materials in to see what it is. Our goal is to do it. It's important. It's as important as the athletic piece, the kind of performing arts piece. As much as we can, and I know those kids are important to do it. We do have some of those kids who will do it remotely. It won't be the same, but she'll give individual attention for them, and attention for them as well. As they're playing kind of at home, kind of that remote part. The other thing is we are kind of gung ho on figuring out a theater production in this type of setting. We have a play in mind. I think it's called Almost Mean, which allows for a very minimal number of kids on stage at any point. It's broken up into all those much smaller scenes, so you actually don't have the kind of buildings, and you can have like 2 or 3 kids just work on this scene and this part and kind of rehearse individually. That's in the very, very early stages, but that is a goal of ours. We want to try and do as much as possible. We know it's important. We didn't get to do the musical in the spring, which was very disappointing, especially for some of our senior performers who didn't go out like that. So we want to try and figure out that piece as well. I mean, nothing's definite on that yet, but that is a goal for us.
Somewhere.
We're trying to run band and chorus as well. It's been a real priority. I met with Matt and Dan a couple times.
Where would you do it? In the gym?
No, we're not gonna be able to run full band, because essentially, we often have extra specials at the same time you have band and chorus, so there would be a competing interest potentially in the gym. The way Matt has run his band for a long time has been by instrument. So other than his whole band days, like historically, he's had a whole band day. But typically, he'll practice with flutes. He'll have the trumpets down another day. So that is really going to be the approach, where we'll break it out. It'll be more by instrument days. We haven't really got our arms around how we do a whole band day. In fact, we've been really staying away from a whole band day. I mean, just because it gets so crowded in that band room, we don't know how we do it safely.
This time of year, couldn't you use that amphitheater?
Yeah, for sure. We absolutely could. And Matt could definitely go down there if he wanted to do a whole band thing. We talked a lot about instrument PPE. That's kind of what we're calling it at the middle school as well. He even had an idea for this flute sock he was telling me about. So we're learning all about different instrument PPE that I didn't know existed. But I think it's great. With Dan and chorus, because chorus is probably even more dangerous than band from a COVID spreading perspective. We're just going to move Dan out underneath the 5th grade awning. Like that's where that class will begin each day. And if it's weather decent, they'll step out into that bus loop area and they can, as much social distance as they feel they need, they can have. If it's rainy, they may have to be underneath the 5th grade awning area, but they could at least be spread out. The other thing is with that schedule change we made, as you know, from having a couple students go through 7th and 8th grade, study halls have always been at the end of the day, and that's when band and chorus existed. They're no longer at the end, they're in the middle, and they're staggered. So it actually helps us. It drives our numbers down for the band and the chorus at any one time. And this past year, you could have whole band day could have been all of 7th and 8th grade. That's a lot of kids. Now it's only 7th or only 8th. We do have a couple scheduling conflicts to try to work through. Band will be a little shorter this year. So instead of 45 minutes, it's going to have to be 30, not to get into like the deep weeds of the schedule, but just to make all 4 fit, they're going to have to be slightly smaller. And in talking to Matt, he said that's actually what they're kind of recommending to keep the viral exposure levels down.
Sorry, I keep stretching out this meeting. That doesn't like it's okay. I'm like, great. Particularly at the 2 older schools, and Lori has a little bit of this, but what is happening with all those extracurricular clubs? So you've got Lego club, you've got student senate, you've got Spanish club, I mean, cooking class, like where is all that? Is all that just being canceled, or how is that all gonna go forward, or somewhere? You can tell me.
Yeah, we're gonna try and do as many as possible, and my hope is to do all, to be honest. We have the luxury with our flex day where that may be a lot of where that meeting time kind of takes place, which is not what we would do traditionally, We do a little bit during our flex time, but the way that everything's structured, we're gonna have to do a lot of these meetings either remotely or in some sort of hybrid model or completely spaced out with the kids. If you think NHS where there's like 80 kids, they're gonna have to do that remotely versus, an exec committee where maybe 4 or 5 kids. Maybe they'll do that in person in a socially distanced like kind of space and stuff like that. But it's important to our kids. It's co-curriculars, like it's part of the whole learning experience, that social emotional piece. And kids love it. Whether it's our Dungeons and Dragons club or our student senate stuff or anything in between. And so we're going to try and figure it out. It may look different. Some pieces of it, some of their projects, some of their work, some of the components of what makes it happen. Like with NHS, a huge component is their peer tutoring, and that's going to have to be different. We would typically do that out of the learning lab in kind of a drop-in type setting. Can't really do that in this environment, so we got to figure out kind of a different model than that. But we're going to kind of chip away at it little by little, and as we can kind of get solutions to them, we're going to kind of move forward with those kind of clubs and organizations. The nice thing is they can still just talk to each other over the computer when they need to, and continue to organize. And I know our execs have been doing that, over the summer and the spring and too, so hopefully we can kind of continue with that type of model.
We're very similar to what Brian's described, different in some ways. We don't have the flex day built in, but similar in spirit, where one of the great dangers of the spring with remote learning, and even if we have to toggle out of green into yellow or orange, is that lack of connection kids feel. So having the clubs run in some form or fashion, that is really important to us. Plus, culturally, we lose big parts in school. You had mentioned peer outreach. Peer outreach they run evenings for us. It's a big part of the culture of the building. It makes it a richer place. We definitely don't want to lose it. But can we do peer outreach before school? We really can't easily. We might be able to run peer outreach, but a lot of times we can't, in that when your kids enter the building this year, when Peyton comes on in, he's going to go directly to his homeroom. So I'm going to need all the homeroom teachers there. Now, where peer outreach might be okay to run in the morning is it's run by the 2 guidance counselors. Well, okay, they could be available because they're not homeroom teachers. But in other cases, like say a newspaper club, well, they could because she's a homeroom teacher. So we're going to have to be really flexible about how and when we run the clubs. And some clubs for middle school might run in a way which they never have before. They could run after hours potentially, where kids are logging into a remote club. But we do want to provide the opportunity to have the connections there for the kids. And in certain things that are just so important to our culture, like a student senate, student council at the middle school, like senate up here at the high school, we don't want to lose that. So even though we may have to get kids out of their homerooms in the morning, we're going to have to find a way to make that work.
Right. Jen and I have been working really hard on that homecoming parade that we've been talking about. That we're thinking of maybe backing off on all that.
We're actually talking about
Just this year.
Just this year. We'll be back next year.
I'm heartbroken where it doesn't look like we have it.
I know, right?
I know.
Air Fisher Cats is open. At this point, I think what we should do is have Dr. Bartlett demonstrate the learning model, and then when we finish that, have the board take a vote on the plan we presented. Does that sound amenable?
Good.
Am I supposed to leave now?
No, you can for just a minute. You don't
Oh,
have to write yet. All right.
Good.
So Roy's gonna pull up some slides that I have because it's just a couple kind of to lay some groundwork about this. I just wanted to, for 1 second, kind of go back over the integrated learning model, the model formerly known as the hybrid model. What we're really talking about is integrating the on-site and remote learning experience for students so that we have some seamless transitions for students who are going to be in and out of the classroom due to quarantine or just, typical illness. We want to provide some personalized direct instruction. We want to centralize student access to learning, foster some independence in that process, in the learning process for kids. Provide some structure that works for students in the building and out of the building so that everyone can be on the same page, and use some systems, some software that really gives us some accountability. So in a normal classroom where you have the teacher can kind of circulate through and watch what kids are doing and look at their work, immediately engage whether or not they're understanding, this, the software that we're talking about using and planning on using is going to give us that accountability, that independent accountability, so that teachers can track what students are doing independently and move them forward. Again, this is going to look different in every school. I've kind of brought that up just because we really are looking at the developmental level of students and what their capacity is going to be is very different. So, and the delivery model is going to shift a little bit based on the age of students as well, which is just how schools operate. So, Roy, next slide. So again, I just want to show you this kind of graphic because it really simplifies this. We're talking about 3 different key components to learning. That's the direct instruction piece, workshop model, which is the opportunity to reinforce and practice learning, reteach, and give kids some independent work where they are trying to practice what they are doing. Also the conferencing and checking in with students that can happen during workshop model, whether you're in person or off-site, is going to be, that's a really important part of the learning process. When you get some feedback about the work that you've done, then you can make adjustments and know right away where you need to work a little bit harder, try again, maybe receive some additional instruction to help you over whatever that hump is, wherever you're struggling. And then again, that adaptive learning software is going to give some opportunity for independent assessment so that teachers can adapt what they're doing and recognize They've been trying to do this independently. They're working on these lessons to reinforce this digitally, and I can still see that they're struggling with this, and I can regroup my students, and I can use that data to inform what I'm doing in the classroom. So that's a really important piece. Next slide, Roy. Looking at the key elements of this whole thing in seminar, that's when you're going to have teachers giving that direct in-person instruction. And we're looking at small 15 to 20-minute segments of instruction. So really, the format of this requires the shift in thinking about instruction delivery. We're talking about chunking your instruction. You may start with a whole group, little kind of get everybody together. Here's what we're going to do today. Make sure everyone's on the same page. And break into groups, and then send groups to do different things and move them through centers so that you can have that time in small group to give that direct instruction, right? If you're building this capacity right away with kids, if you're identifying the parameters, the kind of the procedures, how it all works, and they're used to that model and they start to learn that and they can move independently from, oh, I have to get this done now, I'm supposed to be doing my iReady, then I'm going to be done that, and then I'm going to go on and do some independent work, and then I'm going to meet with my teacher for direct instruction. Those key elements will be there whether kids are in the building or out of the building, whether we are in green or yellow, orange or red, because the students are all going to know this is how we do it, this is what we do, and it will continue no matter what status level we are in. In the workshop model, that gives the students a chance to do some independent work, to do some activities, some reinforcement lessons. It gives the teacher an opportunity to check in with kids, see how they're doing, do a little bit of conferencing, as I said, and also that adaptive learning software is a piece of that. That's that assessment piece that I just mentioned. Monitoring student progress in this kind of a world where you don't have kids all in the room with you, this is a great way to do that, and it gives you a very objective, standardized way to understand and to track progress. So that's going to be really important. The software that we're talking about, iReady, is just one piece of that, depending on the level of the student, but it will definitely reinforce instruction, and you can assign specific lessons to help shore up some of these areas that students really need some help. So those three key pieces are the elements that make that discipline model is comprised of. And I know I've worked with amazing teachers in my time, and although I haven't met many teachers from SAU 67 yet, all I hear is how hard they are, or how much hard work they put into what they do and how much they love working with kids. I know working with teachers like that, they want to do everything so big and they want to put their heart and soul into it. And so this is different. This is going to be different because we're asking teachers to take a step back and look at the three key things that really need to happen and work within that model and kind of scale that back so that everyone's getting what they need, and that's a consistent application of that. We know that it's not ideal to have students remote. It's not ideal to not have all your kids in the classroom. You're never going to be able to replicate that classroom experience for remote learners. We all understand that because the best part of being in the classroom with those kids is that interaction between kids, that social learning. The remote option or that remote plan, we're never going to be able to replicate that. That's why it's so important to us. We really want the kids in the building, but we're going to make sure that the kids who are remote, whether it's a full-time situation or it's an ebb and flow of students, that they're still going to get those key elements that make learning possible for them. That's why this model is going to help do that. Next slide, Roy. Thank you. So in this little demonstration, we're going to do some audience participation. If you'll humor me, if you are on board with this, I'm going to need some help. I'm going to send my remote learners out right now. Make sure you have your materials, and once you get to your area, you jump right on that Google meeting.
Oh, God, that's me. I have to go.
Oh, no, you're
I'm here? Oh, see, I don't know what I'm doing.
You're right there. You're in trouble, and I need you where I can see you. So what I'm going to do is just a quick demonstration of a math lesson for 5th grade. No, I'm going to tell you right now, I was an English teacher. So why did I choose math? Because I think math is a little more concrete when it comes down to like what it is. I'm going to just pull for examples and things for you guys to kind of mull around. So before I get too far into this, let's see. I think, or you can go to the next slide. So this is what I would have in my classroom if I were a fifth grade math teacher. I would have kind of this greeting in the classroom, probably written right on the board, did it digitally so everyone can see it. But what I want you guys to do is kind of turn this way so that you can see the Google Classroom site. Because when we talk about centralizing our instruction, right, and all the tools that students need, no matter where they are, we talked about over grade 2, so 3 and up, we're going to use Google Classroom. So I put this together just so that we'd have some kind of sample, but I want you to see what it's comprised of so you can understand how it all works together. On the home page, you've got the immediate notices of things that can be posted. I went in and put in an overview of the schedule. That's there for everybody, students in class, students at home, so that they know what time do I need to be in class. If I'm off-site, what time do I need to get ready to join the class, right? So that's in there for everybody, just as kind of a general note. And then I have like a little daily math challenge every day, so that when you walk into the classroom, you know that you go right to this location, you know what that daily math challenge is, and you can jump on that, especially like Brian and Dwayne. You gotta keep them busy all the time, those two. So under classwork, this is where I have things like the math seminar, math workshop, daily math challenge. So we just talked about those rotations, the seminar, workshop rotations. I would have a list in here of the math seminar groups. Now, don't panic, no one's actually gonna have to do any math, but you guys are all in here, the math seminar groups, 1, 2, and 3. They wanted me to give them cool, cute names. I didn't do that because I want to make the point that these groups can change based on what kids are doing. And maybe you have, in this whole group of my students, I have a couple that, a handful that are still really working on a certain skill. So I'm going to change my groups around and group them together so that I can really target what they need and get them to where they're mastering that skill. We also have math workshop. So I would constantly refer back to this as a teacher. In my math workshop, these are the can-dos and the must-dos. So when you are not sitting in front of me for direct instruction, you have your list of your can-do stuff, and then you have the must-dos. The must-dos, that's that adaptive software piece and whatever the... Sure. Okay, what I'm saying, this would not be projected for everybody, right? Like, I'm just showing you this. This is what's on my laptop. I'm just showing you this so that you guys can see what I'm going to be looking at. I would have this information in a different place for kids to see. You can't do this and must-dos.
Let me reflect, do you mean it would be on each of their screens, or it would be up on a whiteboard, or what would the students be seeing?
Well, it's in the Google Classroom, so kids can pull that up and look at that. I would have it posted, written on the whiteboard, whatever. We're gonna want this stuff in multiple places anyway. Is that good?
Is that better, Roy?
Or is that better?
It's better.
It's still hard.
I can go over there.
It's still hard. It's a little bit.
Yeah, I can actually, I'll go right behind Brian here.
I can hold it.
Yeah.
How's that?
I'll just go right here.
Is that a little bit better?
Okay.
There's still a glare. Lights off.
Yeah, the glare from the screen makes it hard to see.
I think the section here.
Better?
No.
All right.
Can you be closer to the camera, do you think?
I think so.
Or
That's
glare?
what it looks like.
So,
Yeah, can you get a lot closer, because this, on the screen, the screen we're trying to see is a teeny little thing. So what if you sit in that chair that's right in front of the screen?
in the slide presentation, Roy's going to show these slides. So I just wanted to give you guys a little overview, but that,
Sure.
He's gonna pull that up in just 1 second.
It's a minute behind. So it's a second behind. Right now it's the floor.
The floor looks nice, I'll tell you that.
It's a little better now. The glare is just hard, but I think that's the best for
I don't know where I can.
I'm gonna have Roy pull that up on the slideshow anyway,
Hold back up.
but that's gonna be for everybody on YouTube.
Okay.
That's not okay?
So on the replay of YouTube, they'll be able to see it more clearly.
Yeah, Roy's gonna just pull up the slides that I had up there anyway, and one of the slides is this slide that you're looking at. I just wanted to show you how it exists in the Google Classroom world. There it is, right there. So it's up there now. Is that okay for everybody if we just have it on the YouTube stream? Okay. All right. Brian, can you get the lights for me? All right, so all the things that I'm showing you, these major pieces, they are a part of the slideshow. I just wanted you to see that they are also in the Google Classroom site so that kids can access them no matter where they are. I have the daily math challenge in there, I have math journal, and then I have some of my favorite recipes, and these are all math activities that I would be working on with the kids, and that when they do their independent work, they would go and they access those documents. I have it set so when they click on them, it makes them their own. It's not a template, they can work with their own document. Those are all in there, loaded up, they have due dates on them, kids will get reminders, parents can actually get reminders for due dates for all these activities too. And then I have some all done options. So if you're all done, you've got all these things done, you have a few minutes, there's some math games that you can do. There's some interactive math games. So I'm gonna go back to the top right now, and you guys can turn, if you want to see that can-do, must-do list, it is on the whiteboard right now, or it's screaming that, sorry.
It's okay.
It's good though, because you're going to have to come up and do a math challenge.
Oh, awesome.
So,
Oh, minored in that.
That's good. Yeah. All right, so we have the can-dos and the must-dos, so you build this into your classroom, like they know what they need to do, they know what they can do, and they know what they have to get done. And in the process of them working independently on these pieces, the teacher's going to pull up the groups to do instruction. That make sense, everybody? Any questions so far? Okay. So, I said before. All right, so, right, you could go to the last slide. It is once again those seminar groups. So as you can see, in group 1, I've got Jennifer, Jeff, Brian, Martin, Dwayne. In group 2, I've got Jared, Nicole, Jeff, Jenna, and Owen. In group 3, Adam, Bryce, Marcy, Clem, Lori, and Dean. Adam, Marcy, and Dean are my remote students. They are remote right now. At the top corner of my Google Classroom site, there is the link for Google Meets for this classroom. So I've instructed my remote learners to go into different spaces and be remote learners and jump into that meeting. Let's hope they're good listeners too. Maybe.
I hear a lot of chatter out there.
There is a lot of chatter.
There they are. No.
No, no. Hi guys, how are you? All right. Of course he is. I'm not surprised at all. All right, guys, so this, I'm just showing you to everybody so that everyone in the classroom can see what would be happening if you were remote. Dean, if you're not ready to learn, I'm just going to shut you down, okay? Okay, all right. All right, so group 1, I want you to grab your Chromebooks. I want you to jump on iReady and start. Remember, you got 15 minutes to do. Get that done before you move on to your Google Classroom stuff and/or I call you up for seminar. Group 2, you know what you're supposed to do. You're going to grab your Chromebooks, jump on Google Classroom. You've got your math journal, daily challenge, multiplication review is due today. You know where all of those are. Been working on quite a few of them, so jump right in. And group 3, I need Bryce, Clem, and Lori to come right on up here. You've got a little special spot already.
You can do it. I knew there was.
If you're working on iReady, you're working on iReady, I want headphones on, Brian, especially you. I want you to be paying attention to what you're doing. Make good use of that time. All right, everyone's gonna need, my remote kids, you guys doing all right? Yeah. All right, you're gonna need your whiteboards. You got your whiteboards ready? Good job. All right, so this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna start with just a little warm-up activity, and that is gonna be the daily challenge. So in front of you, you have a piece of paper. You guys have your piece of paper. The first thing I want you to do is copy your math problem onto your whiteboard. So flip that right over. Copy on whiteboard, nice job. Guys with me? Very good, confident, very nice. Look at that.
I'll leave it to somebody else to do.
Just copy it first. Thank you, Adam. All right, now we're gonna do this as a race, okay? You can only use addition and subtraction. You have to put the symbols in between the numbers and make that equation correct. Ready, set, go. Hold your board up when you're ready. Oh, you guys at home cheated. Clown wins because
Crossed
you
out the
guys have been working on that problem for 15 minutes at home. I know you have. Clown wins.
Nice job, Mom.
Son, do you want to?
That's not just because you never go to school.
Son, do you want to explain to everyone how that all worked out?
Yes.
Show your work? Well done.
2 minus 3 is -1, plus 5 is 4, plus 6 is 10.
All right,
Bryce, did you even get your marker open?
You're supposed to use both.
Bryce was just licking the marker. I wasn't even writing anything. I don't know.
Smelling it.
I don't
It still
know.
smells right.
Mr.
How can I
Ford,
smell these?
what are you supposed to be doing right now?
I read it.
All right, so I would keep these students up here. We're going to be doing some targeted things. Once we get a little warm up in, be checking in with my remote kids, doing the same thing. The more that I can get them to show me their work with the whiteboards, that's just a really great, easy way and visual check-in. When we're done, I would send these guys back to their seats so that they can do, again, Ireland independent work. I might even send something with them and post something to my remote kids so that they can continue working on whatever the skill is independently based on the instruction and what I just saw. And then I would call another group up and just continue to operate that way until I got through the groups. This would give, in a normal block, I think, when I looked at like the elementary kind of sample schedule, it would give another probably 20 minutes after you've gotten through your groups. That 20 minutes can be checking in with individual kids. It can be checking in with your remote kids individually. But the goal is really, you're gonna, it's kind of a catch and release. Get everyone together, work on what you need to work on, and then send them back out to do what they need to do. Does that make sense to everybody? I think that people are kind of envisioning that there's this massive creation of these really complex and dynamic remote learning environments where you're using, multiple apps to kind of enhance this process. What we really are looking for is engagement. And so if you have students engaged, the best way to engage them is to have a conversation with them, to have them where you can connect and speak to them and check in with them. All the rest of that stuff is great. All those apps, there's so many cool apps, but my advice is to pick one or two that you think you're going to be able to use to recreate something you do in the classroom that you can't necessarily do like this. Sort boards, things like that. There's teachers already doing stuff like that. They're just amazing. So that's really the extent that needs to happen. It's really not an expectation that there's going to be these, vast digital environments for students who are remote. We really want them FaceTime. We want to see their face. We want to interact with them that way.
What are they seeing? Are they looking at a pretty close-up view of you?
They're listening.
It's right, it's through that camera.
Yeah.
Would that be, so can you share how we would have the opportunity, Dean, Adam, and I, to interact with these other students, maybe while you work with another group?
Can I say hi to Mr. Ford? I haven't seen him in like 10 minutes.
That's it. You're losing this right now. Cut you right out.
I'm doing my work. I'm doing my own work. So,
So Marcy, really the idea is when you're working with the small groups, if you wanted the group remotely to interact with the people working with you at the table, that would be okay. I think it would be really hard to try to have them, you guys remotely reacting with the rest of the kids in the room, just because the sound isn't set up to do that, and we know that, and that just makes it really complicated. But when we get to the point where Google releases the new breakout rooms, you might be able to pair kids up. Someone on their Chromebook, you might be able to put them in a Google, in a breakout room so that you can have a remote student and in-class student working on something together, or even 2 or 3. That's an opportunity that, I think that's supposed to be ready, and Laura, you can chime in on this, but I think it's end of September. October. So that's just that breakout room piece. So that's basically what this whole delivery model is about. It's not more complicated than that. You guys are great students, by the way, except you're kind of a mess, so. That's it, that's all I have to share. Thank you, guys.
Any questions for Dr. Bartlett?
So is this, seems like a very basic question, I guess, but is this sort of the formula you're expecting in all 3 schools for most classes?
I think it's gonna look a little different in the high school. I think high school teachers have some other tools that they're gonna kind of incorporate into this, and they may need to be at the whiteboard doing a pretty complex math problem. But I think, yes, the general model is gonna be kind of the way that we're gonna meet the needs with the ebb and flow of kids due to whatever the reasons are.
The remoteness will not always work with very young children, so we don't have problems about adaptation to that.
Yeah.
Are all school grades going to be using whiteboards like that for the remote learning? And do parents need to pick them up, or we got to distribute them?
We were able to send them home last year when we needed to.
Depends on the course. Like one of the things we're developing is different kits for different areas. For example, art's working on art kits that we can send home for the kids as individualized. Science, we began talking about science lab kits, like what are some basic supplies that you would send
You'll
home.
send home what you need. If the math teacher in your school wants to do that. then
Yeah, oh yeah.
And I think also for our remote piece, we didn't do a lot of at the elementary level. It went out and very few things went out after. Whereas for the people who will be largely working with our remote students, it'll be on the average every 2 weeks, where stuff will go out, stuff can come in. With young children in particular, that's important with reading books.
Yeah, I'm just thinking because some people who start off not remote, become remote suddenly, so everybody will need everything.
Yeah, they do, but how we'll send it out in the elementary, you're right, there'll be people that will stay remote, and that will look one way. And there'll be people that, for instance, if your child has to stay home because they're waiting for a test or they got sick, they would drop back into their class. So, yes, there will be.
And I think the fact that we're not in an emergency situation now, this afternoon, I've been talking with one of the teachers here, we kind of were chatting about these whiteboards, and I was like, oh, I've used those before, and it's a great teaching tool to just kind of instantly kind of get a little insight on what kids are doing. So I just kind of grabbed them. Teachers, when they're really doing this, they know exactly what they want to do. They know what kids need, and because we're not in an emergency situation, things can be sent home. The remote learners, parents can pick stuff up, things like that. So it can definitely be way more thoughtful and planned, as great teachers always do. They always do.
And Home Depot cuts those and gives those for free. Those whiteboards. They will, Home Depot and Lowe's will do those. They used to. Now there might be a backlog because I'm sure a ton of people are doing it, but that used to be something they would do. Because they're like the inside of shower stuff.
That's good to know. Thank you.
So at this point, I would ask the board to make a motion to accept the SAU 6-7 comprehensive school opening plan and integrated learning model as presented tonight, knowing that it will be updated and amended as we go along. But you've taken votes before. I think accepting the whole written plan would be a nice suggestion.
Anyone want to move?
I would so move that motion.
Second.
So Eric moved and Clement seconded the motion.
Any discussion?
I have some. I just want to say, I think it's a fantastic piece of work, and I think everyone, all the administrators in this room clearly put in a big part of the time. Certainly Dean did, but everyone seemed to. And when this came out, I saw this, I was just really, really impressed with the content, the quality, everything else. And I appreciate, we already talked about, we are going to update some of the things that are in here, but what is here is just the amount of time that it must have taken and a limited amount of time that you had to put this together. I'm just really, one of the more impressive things I've seen that come out of the school district, in my view, but that's just my 2 cents. I think it's great.
I would agree with that, Bryce, absolutely. This is very impressive.
This is the work of a ton of people, but I do want to point out Jamie, or Dr. Bartlett. She just, especially her ability to sit in a room and have 6 of us jabber at the same time, and her to get down something coherent.
Pulling a mask over your face, was that happening too?
Yeah, just
Childish
the
behavior.
ability to pull that together, Dwayne doing his part, Dwayne, come up with a facilities plan, then he goes to his people and do it. All 4 principals, look, you got 2 days to fill this out, fill it out, and it comes back to us, and the same thing with Marcy. So it really was a team effort, and we appreciate especially Dr. Bartlett's role in kind of pulling this all together. And also, she expressed some trepidation. Look, I'm stepping in here as a new person. I don't want to step on toes. I want to respect what's done here. But I really appreciate her work especially.
Thank you, everyone. My thoughts the same. The only thing I would say now is that it's a great plan to implement and execute. We're going to need the full support of the community as well. So hopefully everyone can continue to take all the necessary safety protocols to keep our numbers down and keep everyone healthy. Any other discussion before we go? All in favor of accepting SAU 67 comprehensive school opening plan and integrating learning model?
Aye.
Aye. 9-0 votes. That was our last agenda item until we get to the Title IX policies, correct, Dr. Cascan?
Yeah, and to tell you the truth, I didn't get as much done on those as I had hoped. I don't have them in the SAU specific format or the district specific format, and I really haven't gone in and changed the wording. So I'm wondering if we can just accept them as a first read for the SAU, knowing that they will have to be changed or address any questions that people have for them.
Well, as a point of order, do we have to close out the SAU meeting, do that? As a point of order, do we have to close out the SAU meeting?
We have to adopt it by all 3 entities.
Okay.
So if the SAU adopts them, then we have meetings scheduled in September for each of the districts to look at them.
I'm all right with accepting it in the first read. This is a pretty urgent matter.
As an SAU, it would be good.
You want to make a motion? I make a motion that we accept the Title IX policies as a first read, as Dr. C has posted on the individual website and that we've been provided previous to today.
I second that.
Jeff, you're going to say something?
Just that, I read through them, I almost got through all of them, a lot there. And it's clearly that they're written for the districts. Is it the intent that we would take them and adjust them to be an SAU policy for the SAU?
Well, the reason you need them for the SAU is they cover, we won't have a student one. Okay, we won't have a student one in the SAU, but we will have the staff one.
Yeah.
Because we have 6 people who work in the SAU staff. So it's a policy to cover those 6 people. So you're right, we wouldn't have the student ones, but we would have the staff ones. The part that we are struggling with a little bit, not struggling, we just need to look at to make a decision. One of the things that's clear in the construction of these is the person who does the investigation, it's almost a separation of powers. The person who does the investigation should finish the investigation, come to a conclusion, and then hand that over to a second person who then makes the decision of how anything is going to be remediated. And then after that, there has to be an appeal.
Third entity for appeal.
The appeal.
Who's that middle entity?
Well, and that's where for students, we're thinking that the middle entity should be the principal. But for staff, that I should be the middle entity. And again, moving it to the school board for an appeal, there has to be an appeal. appeal for adults. I'm comfortable adopting these as a first read. Marcy and I are working on training for this. And I think the key message is, for us is, we are against discrimination in any way, shape, or form in this district. If you are ever in a uncomfortable situation or you feel you've been discriminated, we want to give you a clear person to talk to, which is Marcy Kelly, Human Rights Officer, Title IX person. But you can report it to anybody, but we want to make it clear that this is going to be dealt with, it's going to be investigated, and there's going to be action taken. Because that's, I think, when people get discouraged. They see these things going on, they report it, it's not investigated, action isn't taken, and then they fail to report. So I think we can adopt them as a first read, and we'll take a look at the fine tuning the language a little bit more.
Well, I guess I need a clarification. Are we adopting these, or have we just accepted them as a first read?
We accepted them as a first read, but for only the SAU today.
Okay. There's in the R procedures policies, there's a lot of days that need to be identified, whether they're business days, calendar days, and so forth. So we'll need to have a discussion on that. And again, to get them to an SAU level policy, a lot of this has to be changed out. In a place where it says school district, we now have to put in SAU and kind of have a.
And I had intended to get to that work this last week, and I just, I don't know, the sun was shining too bright. But I want to prepare them for your September meeting, Kevin, and that's what
Anything else? All in favor accepting as first read, Title IX policies? Aye. Aye. 9-0. Okay.
I think that's it. I think we're not going to have district meetings tonight because I don't have the policy.
And we don't need public comment. I haven't received any emails as of tonight.
Mr. Chairman, do we have any other business we need to conduct in the next, I mean, we've been meeting a lot, the SAU board. Do we need to meet again anytime soon? Or are we?
I think it goes to the individual districts over the next 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. Why don't we tentatively have a touch base, in 3 or 4 weeks and see how things are going, but we don't need to have a physical meeting. It's up to everyone else. We don't,
So much more fun than regular.
we don't have one planned until November. Wait, when do we have November for the budget meeting for the SAU?
November 9.
I think we just work closely with the administration by email as school starts, unless anyone has anything, otherwise, it's in good hands, the best hands.
Do we not have a BO meeting right after this?
Yeah, one right. No, we don't need one tonight because we're going to delay the policy to your September meeting, which is September 9th, 2nd, and 3rd.
I thought we had a non-public meeting.
I don't think we do.
We do.
We do. So the BO board will go to non-public after this one to discuss personnel.
So I have a motion to adjourn the SAU meeting.
So moved.
Dennis seconded.
Second.
Jeff seconded. Everyone seconded. Okay. Thank you very much, administrators. Dr. Cascadden. All in favor to adjourn the meeting? Aye. Welcome back. So meeting adjourned at 7:40.